Hi, I am Rohit Dev, Managing Director at Ideas 91, predominantly a holding company for various businesses. We run procurement for home, kitchen, and renewables. We also market a brand of home appliances across Middle East and Africa called RD. And currently, I'm extremely passionate about creating happiness in organizations and thus have a happiness playbook and a measuring tool to measure happiness in organizations. I am also the founding chair of YPO Dubai Downtown and the current president at TAI and the secretary to the board of the HBS Club of the GCC. I am very pleased to be on Voices of the Future. Thank you, Tariq.
We're genuinely honored and privileged to have Rohit Dev with us. As you mentioned, he is my co-alumni at Harvard Business School and co-board member. I know him through YPO, TAI, and various other activities. He's a true entrepreneur. And today I heard he wants to talk about happiness in business. And as we talk about voices of the future and businesses of the future, life, humanity, everything, happiness, peace, those are the kinds of things that we absolutely need to embrace and to be able to nurture, because it's not all about business and growth. It's also about humanity, happiness, and love. Rohit,
Thank you.
really, really happy to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. Rohit, you've lived a very interesting entrepreneurial life, and we will get to that. But let's talk about little Rohit. Many years ago, in your early days, do you remember something that inspired you, made you happy, shaped who you are today? Perhaps a teacher, your parent, somebody or the other. What shaped you to becoming who you are today?
So, I grew up in Delhi, India. I had a great and very happy childhood. I came from a family which was into business. My father was into business. Huge inspiration. My grandparents were great inspiration. My father, since when I remember, used to talk about business, how business is done, what it is. So I think that entrepreneurial mindset came about at a very, very young age. On the other hand, my mom's father was an engineer, so my mom wanted me to be an engineer, and she had seen professionals do very, very well. So she wanted me to be a professional, and that was the thing. But I think huge amount of happiness was there since my childhood. So I'm very, very grateful. I see a lot of people having troubled childhood. So I am very grateful, and I think life has been great. So.
Amazing. I mean, so maybe because you've had a happy childhood, perhaps you want to pass it forward as far as the future is concerned. Were you a naughty child? Were you a smart, bright child? Were you getting yourself into trouble regularly?
So I was a bright child and a naughty child. So both were there, right? And I got up to as much mischief as possibly I could without getting, I got a lot of thrashing, but yeah. but touch wood, I also excelled in school, which was something that made me get away with a lot of the mischief I was up to. But
Indeed, with my parents, I was exactly the same. I was actually notoriously mischievous and naughty. And when I was at school, I think my parents gave up completely. And they said, I don't think we'll be able to control his naughtiness. We can perhaps channel it towards success and stuff like that. So said, as long as you are getting A's all the way through, and you're doing, then you're allowed to go and play cricket for 4 hours. You're allowed to go and date girls. You're allowed to do whatever.
I was never allowed to date girls.
I was. I mean, that gave me a very early license to actually do just that. So, and therefore had an additional layer of incentive to go out,
do well,
to perform,
to
do well. But in the process, and this is a really important question, Rohit, in the process, what they were not able to teach me is how to deal with failure. is how to deal with disappointment. I also had a beautiful home, family, happy life. And I fast forward another 5, 6, 7 years, I failed my chartered accountancy exam. And when I failed that the first time, I basically fell apart. That's when I was losing my hair. And honestly, I thought, who is going to marry a failed accountant? I mean, who is going to, because game over, life's finished. And I realized that I was even embarrassed to tell my parents and my family and everybody about the fact that I had failed at something. And then obviously I recovered. I managed to find my way through life, and I was extremely successful. But at that point in time, failure to me was complete, because I failed an exam and I didn't see anything for moving forward. Have you
Very,
had...
very great insight. But yeah,
It is at that point in time, because, you know, you just don't know how to, and you feel that you won't be part of society anymore, and failure becomes a burden. Fear of failure becomes your motivator in life. Fear of failure becomes your reason to do things or not do things. You should do it through love. You should do it through happiness. You should do it through passion, not fear. Fear of failure shouldn't be a driver in life. So you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs know failure and understand it very well. Tell us about a fun story that you've had around failure. I mean, I've told you my fun story that I failed my exam.
wasn't a fun story, but I had a very, very happy life and a very successful life till the age of 35. I came to Dubai when I was 25, set up a very flourishing business in partnership with my uncle. But in 2008, we had a separation in the business, which was very challenging. I would not call that, well, it was kind of a failure, right? It was, you were creating a very big ship, and then suddenly you had no ship to captain, right? And that was a big challenge. I did face smaller failures in terms of college, etc. Did not get the college I wanted, but I was so happy-go-lucky that it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
So when I go into this challenge, which I faced at 35, it really, for 6 months, and I clearly remember those 6 months, it was the most distressing time for me. Mm-hmm. And I think what helped me was the support of the family. Mm-hmm. My wife has been a pillar, and she continued to say that you are exceptional. So she used to drive my motivation that you're exceptional and you'll do very, very well. And my parents stood behind me like pillars, very categorically, to that do whatever you want. And I think the family support that I got was what brought me back very fast. 6 months after something like this, to come back immediately in 6 months and set up a new business and get back to the grind, I think I'm very grateful to my wife and my parents and the wider family.
Yeah. Indeed, you know, it's quite interesting because we've spoken to 100 voices of the future in our book and on our platform, and one thing that has been consistent throughout, that wherever there have been dips and troughs and challenges and difficulties, families have really come together. So I think the family unit, which is sadly breaking down globally at many, many levels, is one of the most unique things that come out. And as I write the future of the world through this book and through the eyes of amazing minds like yourselves, to me, family values and support system, it is an intrinsic asset that we don't realize that we have until we don't have it.
Very, very true.
And I think that is one of the things that does actually come through. So please, thank you for sharing that story. Moving forward, you are an entrepreneur, like you said. Tell us about your parents wanted you to go into business. What is that something that drives you as an entrepreneur as opposed to being in corporate life, which I'm sure you would have succeeded at also, because entrepreneurship has risk, Entrepreneurship has ups and downs. Entrepreneurship, you have to make the coffee and do the whole thing every single day of your life. Why entrepreneurship?
So, like I said, I was a mischievous kid, etc. So, I think I didn't feel that I can report to anyone,
Okay.
right? But I did work with Tata Consultancy for close to 6 months, grew up the ranks. Within 6 months, I grew up 2 positions because, and my boss was very happy. But I think with the challenge my uncle faced and I got into entrepreneurship, I think I enjoyed the thrill of creating my own ship and captaining the ship. I think at a very young age, I got an opportunity to create a large business. I'm till today very grateful to my uncle because I would not have got that opportunity at such a young age.
Sure.
Right? So I think once, if we go into history, my uncle had faced a financial challenge, and then we started this business. So I was able to learn so much at the age of 25, which at any other point of time I would not have. And I think that is also one of the reasons why I do not fear failure. Because when I started, I had seen him fail. I had seen how what things and what the environment does. So I therefore became very calm around anything that kind of was a failure, right?
Right.
So it is a driver. I think being an entrepreneur is something that I learned because of that. But in today's day and age, my personal belief is that everybody is an entrepreneur,
Yes.
even when you're in corporate life. So when we were young, people weren't asked to leave companies.
Yeah.
Today, people are asked to leave companies instantly. And that's, I would say, everyone is thus an entrepreneur. So if you're not performing, you will be asked to leave. So it's better to create a much larger ship than work in corporate life and one day somebody tells you you should leave, right?
Yeah, funnily enough, that happened to me when I was at Bloomberg, and one of the reasons that I was asked to move on, no, we like to let you go.
Go.
I said, well, let me go where? And the reason that was given was that I was doing too well, and I was working there as a contractor. And I created a business which was so large and so significant and opened the TV and everything else that they said, now that you've reached it to a level which is now significant, we'll bring our own people in. And I'm like, really? 5 years later, you're telling me to leave? That's when I ended up becoming what I would call a forced entrepreneur. Because I realized that you're 1 month away, 2 months away from being set, even though you're doing well. And that was my cognitive dissonance, that I was doing well, and that's the reason I was asked to leave. It actually makes you weak in many ways. You become dependent on the salary and things like that. So that was an interesting one. Going back to...
So, but I was an entrepreneur, partnership with my uncle.
Yeah.
We were doing phenomenally well,
Yeah.
but I was also asked to leave.
There you go. See, so it can happen.
It can happen to anyone.
So you need resilience, and you need that sense of inner strength and inner freedom. Following my failure as an accountant, I remember I was working in sleazy nightclubs in London, and I was driving a little car.
Little car is always good.
Well, actually, it was actually quite a big car for an Arab prince, and that's how I was making money because I didn't want to be a burden on my parents and so on. But I'll share a fun story with you. In Carnaby Street, there was a little hole in the wall, and there were 2 planks of wood, and we all used to finish at 3:30 a.m. after the nightclub closed, and my night bus came at 4:12 because I made £15. I don't want to pay £10 for my taxi. So anyway, so I used to sit there, and I remember next to me was a dustman, next to them was a drug addict, next to them here was a prostitute, next to here was a male prostitute. We were all sitting there, a mug of tea, actually it was tea, and 2 slices of toast. And we all sat there and ate that. And from the kind of background, and you'll understand that I come from, that was unheard of. It was impossible. But you know, Roy, at that point in time, I learned humility. I learned humanity. I learned how not to judge. I learned that anybody could get themselves into that position. By the way, one of them was an associate professor of philosophy, also, who was also sitting with us. So you can be a professor, and you can be a dustman, or you can be a prostitute. We're all sitting together. So, like, you know, so that made me a human being. That took out all my rough edges and things like that, because as a young, successful kid, I could do many things. And that was my best learning in life. Even now, when I look back, I feel that I learned more in those difficult times than I ever learned in my successful days. So, sharing two very personal stories.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My perspective is people get the best learning if they go and stay in a hostel.
Okay.
And they go and stay in a hostel, not in a fancy apartment which your parents get you, but in a hostel in a college. And I think that experience is the best at a younger age, means maybe after the 10th standard and before your management. The amount you learn, because then you get to manage. So I'm talking about my personal experience. I did engineering. In my engineering hostel, you get people from all over India. You learn different cultures. You know, India is a country of so many cultures. So you get to learn so many cultures and experience. And I used to always, I'm an early riser. I like to sleep early. My roommate used to sleep late. So 24 hours, someone was awake in our room. So he used to sleep when I used to wake up. So learned how to sleep with the lights on, learned how to sleep with music in a hostel, learned how to manage those people. So I think learning, and you said, like you rightly said, humility, not judging people, these are great virtues to have. But how do people get it in a protected world is the challenge.
Indeed, and a lot of parents ask me, and then we'll get to that in more detail, but one of the questions parents asked me was, you know, they live in Emirates Hills here, the kids, they worked hard, but their kids are living a very cushy life. He said, how do we teach them empathy? You keep talking about empathy. And I said, give them, I don't know, $1,000 and send them to Colombo and say, the summer you're going to be spending with this school or something like that in a charity in Colombo or somewhere where they see poverty, they see difficulty, and they start respecting that. They'll whinge and moan for 2, 3, 4 days because their phone's not working, and then they adjust. So we need to be able to understand, and I talk a lot about empathy mapping and how that is in design thinking and so on. But I think at a very human level, your 10, 12, 13-year-old kid spending some quality time in a place where they need to serve and they need to be part of the community in some way will actually help them grow a lot. And our parents of today find it quite difficult to even visualize that. But I think that would be a wonderful way.
I think that's great. They should be sent without a credit card. But outside of that,
not a credit card, no credit card. I mean, just
outside of
limited money.
Outside of sending them, the other thing that, and like I said, I'm very passionate about happiness. I think at all times of your life, and you know, people say, should I define my purpose? Will it be lifelong? So according to me, you should define your purpose. And can that purpose change in 12 months? Sure. Right? So the issue is not about changing purpose. So, but even at a young age, I think people should be trained to define what they want to achieve. Because education is education, right? But outside education, if they're interested in a purpose like sports or another purpose like helping school children or helping the uneducated, there should be, I think, a great way to create empathy and happiness is to help kids develop a purpose outside of studying alone.
Indeed, and I would challenge you a little bit on the purpose. if you define purpose properly, purpose doesn't change. The activities within that purpose can change. So, for example, my purpose, I've written my transformative purpose is to make a difference for business and humanity. Making a difference is my purpose. So I can make a difference in many ways. That doing the individual elements. Now, this book is about making a difference. This book is about making a difference through people's voices, the amplification of voice. Before that, I was doing other things. If I'm not making a difference, I'm not fulfilling my purpose, and therefore I'm not happy. So therefore, just doing a job, which is like, who cares, is not making me happy because I'm not making a difference. So that's my purpose.
So I'll challenge you on
Okay,
that.
please.
But it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
It's okay. See, why I say purpose changes, right? My purpose was to create a large organization in the procurement space. What was the purpose? That I would help feed so many families and be the support for so many families across the region. Like I said, that changed during COVID when I lost two of my close friends, and I got onto this
Happiness. Yeah.
on this bandwagon of being an entrepreneur for 25 years. I said, what would make a difference in the world? So creating happy organizations. We are on an average, our life is spent more in office than at home. At home, we sleep most of the time we are at home, or the number of hours that if you count. So I said, how do you create that? So my purpose did change. And that's an example of a purpose changing. And that's one of the reasons why I said, can purpose change? Because you can't define a lifelong purpose for a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. That will change over a period of time. So a smaller level purpose also, according to me, is okay.
Fair enough. We'll agree to find a balance between the two. Okay. So, in your entrepreneurial journey, let's say, you are the chair of TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. You've been part of the YPO and a founding chairperson there. What are those entrepreneurial values that you find amongst all of these people around you that you love and you admire, and how can we help them fulfilling their purpose or their potential? Because these entrepreneurs can start from nowhere and build. So what are the core values that you're looking for in these entrepreneurs that you meet around you on a day-to-day basis?
So entrepreneurs who are starting out, I continue to say, and the world has changed. 10, 15 years back, people used to start organizations to build something, build a product, build a service, build something. Today, whenever or most of the young entrepreneurs, they're talking about valuation and exit and, right? So I think that has to come back to, and I think that's also a function of the whole ecosystem, the whole PVC ecosystem, and I see that a lot in TIE. Because TIE as an organization works with founders to make them grow. Yeah. So we see young founders actually talking about valuation, etc., much more than what they want to achieve with their product or service. So my personal view is that I would want founders to really rethink more than valuation is what is the purpose they're building the organization for. And that will lead to huge success, right? And if we pick up organizations that have been successful, from Kareem here to you'll find that they all started with a purpose and then created a valuation.
It's purpose or sometimes a reason. I mean, I totally get that. I also find it interesting that working in clusters and what I would call mastermind groups, because within a YPO, I'm sure there are subclusters and so on, building certain elements. Do you find that these clusters are the reason why some of these people are successful? Because you have an ecosystem of support, as opposed to somebody who is not a TIE member or not a YPO member or not an HBS club member. Is this ecosystem one of the reasons that they succeed?
So your environment does make you succeed, and being part of an ecosystem is, I think, one of the best things that can happen, right? So different organizations are different, right? HBS, you get to meet alumni who've done, getting an entrance into HBS is, like, one of the toughest things to do. And therefore, the alumni itself is a great network to bond with, to work with, to create value. YPO itself is an organization that is by invite only, and provided you have a certain turnover. So you actually meet peer groups in that category of business. One of the best things around YPO is that there are something called forum, where it becomes your advisory board, and nothing spoken in that room goes out.
Correct.
And nobody judges anybody, right? TIE as an organization works to help and promote entrepreneurship much more at the entry level. So that's an ecosystem that gets created. So each of these organizations, because of their different nature, has really helped me learn as well as give back where I can. Right? So,
It's interesting you say that. Tony Robbins says that the 5 to 7 people who are closest to you, around you, is not your network, but your net worth. Which I find a very interesting thing. And then there are times when I have been at my lowest, and then I've been looking around and I'm saying, I think I see why.
And then, yesterday, actually, I was at a party, and there was this friend of mine who actually said the same thing. He said, if you're drinking too much, look around. If you're eating too much, look around. So, right, so we were talking about drinking and eating. He said, it's your ecosystem that creates your happiness, unhappiness, who you want to be, right? So if you do not like who you are, then change the people around you.
Oh, interesting. So going back to Ideas 91, which is your business entity, your holding entity, and with all of these groups, HBS, YPO, and others, you've created an amazing cluster of activities with a big purpose, with making companies happy. Tell us a little bit more about that process, and how can we contribute to that outcome?
So, like I said, during COVID, I had loads of time. I did not travel, and I had 2 friends who passed on. And thanks to that, and shouldn't say thanks to that, but the reality is it made me think, right? It made me think, what is it that I can leave behind, right? And we all talk about a legacy, etc. And I'd rather not talk about it as a legacy, but as something that my 25-year journey as an entrepreneur has made me see the ups and downs of business. So if you do happiness in organizations, the first 10 pages of Google is only about happy employees. Now, as a founder and an entrepreneur, I say that's just not possible, right? And this is antithesis, because the whole world talks about employee happiness. So my perspective as an entrepreneur is that the whole ecosystem needs to be happy. All the people involved need to be happy for you to even keep the employees happy. So you can start with keeping the employee happy, but if the ecosystem is not happy, it'll not create happiness, right? So I believe there are 4 pillars of happiness, and it's the alignment at the top leadership level, including the shareholders. Where are you headed as an organization? Okay, and that has to be very clearly aligned between the top leadership so that it percolates down and there's no confusion amongst anybody. Then it's your team. A great example of the team and creating team happiness, we forget people do join for a job, but are you actually trying to create a purpose that resonates with them as an organization so that they can build? That's the second. The third is the customer. Most organizations that I have come across, other than technology businesses, do not focus on customer happiness. We generally come to know when the customer is leaving us, and then it's too late. And the fourth is the community. And a small take I tell everyone: ask your employees' family what they feel about your business. And an example, I said, it may be that the employee is very happy with you. But if he is working 12-hour days, every day his family is telling him, why are you working 12 hours? Why are you? Ultimately, one of your best employees, because he's working 12 hours, may decide to leave.
Yeah.
Right? So understanding what the family is talking, and it may just require you to work 12 hours. But if you don't talk to the family around it, if you don't make them understand why it's valuable, it'll create unhappiness for your organization.
It's a very interesting and most people will say a very soft approach, but I think it's a very lifelike approach. It's a very human approach and a very hard approach, because I think doing these softer kind of things are more difficult than doing the hard things. Which brings me to what I call hypercapitalism, the VCs in the United States, where you can see the hypercapitalism, where there is only one outcome, and that's growth, valuation, money. And whoever comes along for the ride, and if you're lucky enough to have some stock options, etc., everybody else is almost an asset that is utilized to fulfill that outcome, as opposed to human. Where do you think the future of capitalism is going? Where do you think this hyper-capitalism is going to be? I like capitalism because I think it's important to have that balance in life, to make money and to grow and stuff like that. But isn't capitalism, as we see in the world today, with the disparity of income, 50 families owning 50% of the world, things like that. And that's what's causing all of this polarization, is causing social discomfort. Hypercapitalism has a lot to blame.
So I do personally believe hypercapitalism, as you call it, has been... So 20 years back, hypercapitalism did not exist, right? Why it did not exist is because people used to value businesses based on the profits you make, not on the future dream of the profits that you make, right? And this is, I think, something that really needs to change, because the wealth that is getting created because of a future. So we're all discounting the future today. Like we've discounted climate, we've discounted everything.
Yes.
And, so I wrote about this today as well on my LinkedIn, that very specifically, huge amount of wealth creation is actually increasing the depression in the world. So it is extremely important to understand that let's not drive everything with humongous, like you said, hyper-capitalism, right? Let's drive it logically with the business growth. But
so both of us are from HBS, so this is contrary to our the DNA that has been infused in us. But conscious capitalism.
Conscious. I believe in making good profit, right?
Yes.
And
I'm also, profit is good. So you have conscious capital, you have sustainable capital, you have responsible capitalism, you have humanitarian driven capitalism. And let me throw a difficult one for both our backgrounds is, why is growth really necessary? Can we live in a zero growth environment? Because we have this absolute drive for consumption. And therefore we want growth, and therefore it becomes a spiraling effect, and we just constantly need to grow. Why does your iPhone and my Samsung need to start struggling at the end of 12, 18 months when theoretically it can last 10 years? Our parents' radio used to last 20 years. Our washing machine used to last 20 years. The air conditioner used to last 20 years. Why does now everything has to be pushed so hard and so much? That's hypercapitalism.
I'm in that business, right?
You're in that business. Exactly. You see what I'm saying?
I'm in that business. So I'm very pro-growth. I'm very pro-growth.
Okay.
But I am not pro changing your product regularly. Okay, what that means is, I believe today there's 8 billion people in the world. We can create growth by uplifting people. People who don't have the product buy the product. Okay, I'm not so much about changing products regularly, but uplifting people who do not have these products. So that's my perspective about growth. I do believe even my happiness playbook talks a lot about how do you create happiness to create growth. Because I do believe the growth mindset is something that creates huge positivity, because you're doing something, you're creating value. If you don't have the growth mindset, if you're stable, then my perspective is that you're actually going behind life.
Perhaps you are, but perhaps the world needs to slow down. I'm challenging here. Perhaps the world needs to have a universal basic income, that every time you have a robot, you provide a $1,000 tax, which means equivalent to one person's salary, for example. So now this person can survive because there's this robot that exists. Do you know, I was just reading a statistic today that the rate of robot adoption in Amazon is faster than people adoption, and it's going to catch up in the next 5 to 10 years. So there'll be as many robots as people. And Amazon still pays zero taxes, but that's another conversation. But with the robots taking over, there will be a displacement for people and so on. And I think there has to be some kind of a new acceptance of a new form of living. One of them is universal basic income. Another one is not raping and pillaging our mineral wealth all over the world because you need to find lithium for the next iPhone that's coming in for the batteries. And it's not being, the circular economy is not working properly, so that's not working well. So where I'm going with this conversation is, I think there needs to be a new conversation around money, wealth, growth, creativity, because I think what we have a habit of doing is just sort of extending the conversation from where we are. Oh, I like a little bit of growth, or I like a little bit of this. I think we need to find a way to do a reset. And I felt that COVID would be that reset. I don't think it was. And I'm going to say something which is extremely controversial. If COVID had lasted another 2 years, and another 200-300 million people had died, perhaps we would have learned, like the Second World War. I don't think we learned much. We learned how to do a few things better, faster, quicker, and in a slightly different way. But fundamentally, we're back to the future. It's the same old nonsense, same military development complex, the same education industrial complex. Everything is the same. We've just gone straight back. We've just learned a little bit more about digital and a little bit more about working from home. So I think we need a reset.
Reset, again, what is the reset that you want? If you want people to slow down, I think I agree with the slowdown. But does that mean lack of growth? No. For me, that slowdown comes from removing the thought process of instant gratification and immediate distraction. We look at our phones. If we are putting something on social media, we want to see how many likes we get in 30 seconds. Yesterday, I was watching a series on television, and very nice. They went to give the film to process, and he said, you want it in express, it will take 1 hour. So the kid asked, 1 hour for express? So that's, yes. I think the reset that I would want is that people get trained for understanding there is nothing called instant gratification. The successes we see, as they say, this success came over 10 years. This overnight success came over 10 years, correct, right?
Yeah.
So the issue is the younger generation, because of this hyper-capitalism, has seen huge amount of instant success in their peer groups. People who've got ESOPs suddenly become very wealthy. That is the dangerous one. So you have to create that instant gratification slow down and immediate distraction slow down. That's the reset I would think that makes sense. In terms of universal basic income, between you and me, I am against it.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
for me, it's much more about making everyone employable in the new age. Because if you study happiness, and I've studied happiness in the last 2 years, I've met psychologists, positive psychologists, I've met professors from Arthur Brooks of Harvard to you name it, and I've met them and had a conversation. If people don't have work, they cannot be happy. So you have to create a purpose, and that purpose has to drive their work.
You said, I think I'm 90% in agreement with you, but I think it's about people need to have purpose to be happy, not work to be happy.
But
Work
if you
is
have
not
purpose,
No, purpose
but
could be.
for me, it is you can't get everyone to have a purpose who has no work. Is my perspective.
Fair enough. So what I feel is that let's say we ban more than 6 hours work a day.
I think we should ban more than 2 hours of mobile usage a day.
Fair enough. That's I'm going to be struggling, but again, that's true. So these are the kinds of things where you go to an average consulting firm and 8 hours is normal. No, 8 hours is the minimum. 10 hours is expected. 12 hours is the norm. So you're looking at 12 hours a day. They're all stressed. They're all breaking down. And these are some of the best, smartest people around the place. So there's this drive in a very sort of communistic structure within a capitalistic environment, where the worker bee has to keep working, and if they run out of time, give them something new and see them something new.
So my happiness playbook
Yeah.
actually defines a 4-hour workday to create efficiency.
Yeah.
Like I said, the biggest challenge these people, and if you actually deep dive, you will see they are not doing 12 hours of work.
Oh, yeah. But they're at work for 12 hours.
They're at work for 12 hours. Many meetings. So I say there should be no meeting more than 15 minutes. There should be no meeting more than 4 people.
Yeah.
And there should be focused work, 4 slots of 50 minutes each. And you see the result.
I actually would subscribe to that, because I think our work style has that part of the reset to me is also there. And I'm a culprit myself. I get carried away. I am a creative person, so I go off at different tangents and things like that. But that's my creative process.
No, but that creative process, if you didn't have distraction and you focused on that creative process, you'll come into flow much faster than if you had this suddenly the beep of the mobile or suddenly an email popping up. It actually distracts you.
Fair enough. So I think you use a beautiful word there, flow. I think we need to live our lives in a state of flow. And I do a lot of training around ikigai, which is finding your
Purpose.
your purpose and your center. And ikigai is often defined as micro flows in different areas. And I think we need to find a way to get there as a component of happiness. Rohit, as we come to the end of our interview or our conversation, the book is about voices of the future. The book is about 100 beautiful voices of amazing minds, and it's a collective intelligence, a collective consciousness, and a collective voice. Because individually, you're extremely powerful. Collectively, you'd be awesome. So if there is a happiness message, wait till you see it getting amplified by a bunch of people who have access and networks and so on. So this is the purpose of this exercise. The purpose is to make a difference with this collective voice. Any insights, advice, thoughts that you may have to have a more, and you mentioned happiness, to have a more meaningful and happy future? What kind of things do we need to do? 1, 2, 3 things. I know you mentioned some of the work-related things. Is there anything else?
So Happiness is a function of few things. Family. So, like you said, the family ecosystem is kind of breaking down. Uh, and my research shows that 50 years, 100 years back, there was a large joint family system. So you'd always have young children at home. With young children, everybody enjoys. Means even when we see my neighbor's kid or anybody's kid, we enjoy, we smile, makes us smile. That's oxytocin, right? Now that's getting replaced by pets. So it's a changing world, but it's there. Second is faith. You have to have a belief that there's something bigger than you. Okay? The third is the purpose and meaning of what you're doing. And the fourth is, as I call it, useless friends. Okay? Who are useless friends? Who there is no transaction. You're not going to do business with, etc. Predominantly a school and college friends. This is all a research by Arthur Brooks, and he believes these 4 components create a lot of happiness. Okay? I actually have used this and said in a company where we implement the happiness playbook, block 30 minutes a day for everyone to speak to their close friends. You cannot imagine the kind of happiness it creates, and thus it creates growth for the organization. So that one message is that you really need to focus on what creates happiness, which will lead to success. Because there's this, the chicken and egg. Did success come first? And you pick up examples of people who've been successful. Right. You'll find at least 50% unhappy.
Sure.
So find me a happy person who is not successful.
That's so true. We're talking to Rohit Dev at Voices of the Future, and we've had this amazing conversation, and we are at the peak of this conversation. We're talking about happiness and how the whole philosophy and structure of happiness actually works and gives us a better future. And he is indeed a voice of the future. He's the voice of happiness for us. So we're very grateful for that. Rohit, final question to you. If you were to leave a message in a bottle, which people pick up, say, 10 years from now, and one simple thing that you would like people to remember your words, what would that one message be?
Create a happy company and focus on your happiness through defining your purpose.
Right. With words like that, there's very little more to say. To be happy and purpose. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.